So my question, which is completely linked to what you were just talking about, is given the migration levels, why isn't there some kind of link to migration levels to building capability? And I say that as a retired building professional. We cannot build the amount of residential properties needed with the current migrant intake.
Okay, Chris.
Don't
So
retire.
you're essentially...
Don't retire.
But you're saying, why isn't there sort of a nexus or a connection between people coming in and the amount of stock we're making?
Correct.
Chris, should there be?
There is a relation. Intifar is exactly right, that what we've messed up is housing. We may need to react partly around migration, but what we've messed up is housing. And to Julie's point, right, you know, across 40 years, we have turned housing into a misery machine in Australia. And this is a stunning national fail.
A misery machine.
A misery... So today, it's almost certainly today that we have clicked over as a nation to housing prices being a new record high. They fell for a time as interest rates went up. We had a great experiment, terrible experiment over the past year with interest rates roaring up, and yet house prices went up. I used to think interest rates would do the trick. They won't. We have to build. How do we build? We need the builders. But what we need more than anything else, I mean, for 40 years we have had, you know, not in my backyard, council by council by council, decision, neighbourhood by neighbourhood. And after 40 years we haven't built, and when we do build, we attach all these conditions which make it incredibly expensive. I would love not to touch migration, but we have screwed this up so massively as a nation that we temporarily need to look at migration as part of this equation.
So when you say, I just want to pin you down on this, temporarily look at migration, because you've always been a fan of migration. You're an economist, often you people are fans of migration. Now you're saying, how long then? For how long?
So we have now 725,000 students from the rest of the world studying in Australia. A year ago, that was 555,000. That increase, right? You know, so yes, we sell education to the world, and a lot of that we do well, and some of it we don't do as well. But it is a big part of the increase in the pressure at the moment, and it is a relatively concentrated bit where we can make a change. The federal government needs to actually fund universities instead of, you know, insisting that they make money from foreign students to pay for the domestic students. We can do this better. The problem with 40 years of not in my backyard is if we have perfect policies tomorrow, and you know the government is trying to do some things, moving that lever is great, but perfect policies tomorrow, it's going to take more than a decade to repair this, right? That misery machine is not going to disappear.
Okay, so for how long would we need to pause or at least reduce migration?
The bigger lever that we've got to do over time is to insist that local councils say yes to more, and the government is gently starting that process. It's up more to the states, but it's got to move, and unless and until we do that, we need, I would say, students as the lever, pull back for a while.
Okay. Stephen, are you prepared to do that?
A couple of things. I agree with Chris that we need to look at the student stuff. I agree with that. I think it's a job of work that needs to be done. But also, I don't want to... Like, Julie, you asked a really direct question about what we're doing for renters, particularly older, and I want to give you a really direct answer.
So he's also going back... He's also going
Big
back
sin,
a
I'm
question.
told.
Julian, I'd be outraged.
Wrong. More rights for renters. More rights for renters, particularly older renters and long-term tenancies. It exists in other countries. It hasn't existed in a systemic way here in Australia, and we've got to do it. The pattern of rental has changed in Australia. It used to be something that just young people did. That's no longer the case, and we've got to face up to that. So 2 things that we need to do, plus having a look at the issues that Chris has said. We've got to build more homes, so we've got to nationally agreed accord 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years. We've got to deal with all the things that Chris has said to reach that target.
So you think there needs to be a reduction in migration as well?
No, I think if... can I come back to that? I do want to answer that.
Just
I don't want to dodge it.
Just do it now.
I don't want to dodge it. I want to answer... even if we build more homes and build more homes explicitly for renters, that in and of itself won't deal with the issue of renters being turfed out for no reason. So I think we need to have better regulation around long-term tenancies. We've got to work with the states because they have the constitutional levers to do that. In terms of students, in terms of migration, like it's a chicken and egg to our friend up there. We need more houses built. Where are we going to get the labour from? We generally import that from overseas. So a lot of these things are a feedback loop. Chris is right, though, that the big cause for the massive ramp up in immigration over the last 12 months post-COVID has been big jump up in student numbers.
Okay, when you say long-term leases, before I go to you, Dean, what are you talking about here?
I'm talking about people who will probably be renting a house for their entire life.
So what sort of leasing do you think they should be entitled to, and what would the federal government do?
Well, the federal government doesn't have the constitutional powers, but we can use levers.
You do. You have a lot of power, though.
We have a lot of powers, that's right.
You do.
So it requires us working with the states. And one of the big things that came out of the Accord and the last National Cabinet Agreement on this was having rental rights on the agenda and ensuring that we dealt with long-term tenancies and tenancy right. It's tenancy rights. It is a big unfinished piece.
PK,
Dean,
the
on
point that I
migration.
wanted to make about, this is a very, very important issue because access to housing affects people's quality of life in retirement, and it's the most important determinant in terms of that quality of life experience for people. So the issue is very important and it's urgent because we know we've got the consequences of an ageing population and other things.